Today, we are going to look at the most unbelievable zoo attacks ever captured on camera, from a security guard who walked into a tiger's path to a marine biologist who never saw the jaguar coming. It was August 23, 2017, and the sprawling grounds of Houston Regional Zoo lay in darkness under heavy storm clouds. The aftermath of Hurricane Harvey still evident in the debris scattered across walkways and damaged infrastructure. The 300-acre facility, home to over 6,000 animals, was operating with skeleton crews as staff assessed the extensive damage caused by unprecedented flooding. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across empty pathways, while the sounds of stressed animals echoed through the humid night air. Patricia Williams, a 45-year-old night security guard, was beginning her third consecutive 12-hour shift since the hurricane had passed. Patricia had worked at the zoo for 3 years, taking pride in her role as protector of both animals and property during the vulnerable overnight hours. As a single mother raising 2 teenage daughters, she valued the steady income and health benefits that came with her position, often sharing photos of her favorite animals on her Facebook page with 800 friends. Patricia had grown up in Houston's 5th Ward, developing a strong work ethic through years of overcoming economic hardship and personal challenges. Her job at the zoo represented stability and purpose, and she had earned the respect of both day staff and management through her reliability and genuine care for the animals. That night, Patricia was conducting damage assessment rounds while the zoo remained closed to the public, checking for structural problems and ensuring that all animal enclosures remained secure after the storm's devastating impact. The flooding had caused widespread electrical failures, and many of the zoo's sophisticated security systems were operating on backup power or had failed entirely. Malayan tigers are among the world's most powerful predators, with adult males weighing up to 300 pounds and measuring over 8 feet in length. These apex predators possess incredible strength, speed, and hunting instincts that remain sharp even in captivity. Tigers are solitary, territorial animals that become extremely aggressive when stressed or placed in unfamiliar environments. When displaced from their familiar territory, tigers become unpredictable and exponentially more dangerous to humans. Patricia approached the big cat section around 2 a.m., her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness as she inspected each enclosure for storm damage. The Malayan tiger habitat had suffered significant flooding, and the electronic locking system that secured the massive steel gates had been compromised by water damage. Unknown to Patricia, the backup manual locks had also failed, leaving only the weight of the gates themselves to contain the 280-pound male tiger named Boris. Boris had been pacing restlessly since the storm, his natural instincts heightened by the unfamiliar sounds, smells, and disruption to his routine. The massive predator had discovered that he could push against the compromised gate, and his powerful shoulders had gradually worked the barrier open just enough to squeeze through into the service corridor. Patricia was checking her clipboard and preparing to radio her status when she turned the corner into the narrow maintenance hallway. Her flashlight beam immediately illuminated Boris standing in the corridor, his massive frame filling the space between concrete walls. The tiger's charge in the confined space was devastating and inescapable. Boris covered the distance between them in 2 powerful bounds, his massive frame striking Patricia with the force of a freight train. The impact drove her backward against the concrete wall, while his razor-sharp claws found purchase on her torso and shoulders. Patricia's radio flew from her grip and skittered across the floor as Boris's massive weight pinned her against the wall. The tiger's powerful jaws clamped down on her neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae with crushing force. Boris's territorial instincts drove him to continue the assault until the perceived threat was completely eliminated. Within minutes, Patricia's movements ceased as Boris's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive tiger remained in the corridor, pacing restlessly while guarding his kill and exploring his new territory. The morning cleanup crew discovered the horrific scene when they arrived at 6 a.m. to begin assessing storm damage. Boris was found pacing in the maintenance corridor, his massive frame blocking access to Patricia's body. Zoo emergency response teams arrived with tranquilizer equipment and successfully sedated the tiger after a tense standoff that lasted nearly 2 hours. The investigation revealed that multiple system failures had contributed to the tragedy, including compromised electronic locks, failed backup systems, and inadequate communication protocols during emergency operations. The zoo implemented comprehensive security upgrades, including backup manual locks on all dangerous animal enclosures and enhanced communication systems for night security personnel. Patricia's death devastated her family and the zoo community, prompting industry-wide reviews of emergency protocols and animal containment systems. Her daughters established a scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing careers in animal care, ensuring their mother's dedication to wildlife would continue through future generations of caretakers. It was March 15, 2014, and the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the concrete pathways of Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago, where families with children enjoyed the perfect spring weather while observing animals from around the world. The 49-acre facility buzzed with activity as weekend visitors moved between exhibits, their excited chatter mixing with the calls of exotic birds and the distant roar of big cats. The primate section was particularly popular, with crowds gathering to watch the intelligent chimpanzees interact in their spacious habitat. Marcus Johnson, a 28-year-old part-time zookeeper and University of Illinois student, was preparing for the afternoon feeding routine in the chimpanzee area. Marcus had been working in the primate section for 8 months while completing his degree in animal behavior, and he maintained a small Instagram account with 1,200 followers where he shared educational content about primate intelligence and social dynamics. Marcus had grown up in suburban Chicago, developing his passion for animals through childhood visits to this very zoo. His academic focus on primate behavior had given him theoretical knowledge about chimpanzee social structures, but his hands-on experience was still limited. Marcus took pride in what he believed was his special rapport with the chimps, often spending extra time observing their interactions. That afternoon, Marcus was assigned to feed the chimpanzee troop, a complex social group consisting of 6 adults, led by a dominant male named Caesar. The troop had been experiencing tension due to a recent change in their social hierarchy, with Caesar asserting his dominance more aggressively following the introduction of a younger male to the group. Adult male chimpanzees are among the most dangerous animals in captivity, possessing the strength of 5 grown men combined with unpredictable temperaments that can shift from calm to violent without warning. Caesar weighed 140 pounds of pure muscle, with long arms capable of incredible reach and hands that could grip with crushing force. Chimpanzees have powerful jaws filled with sharp teeth, and they instinctively target the face, hands, and genitals during attacks. Marcus entered the food preparation area adjacent to the chimpanzee holding facility, following what he believed was standard protocol for afternoon feeding. However, Marcus's confidence in his relationship with the chimps led him to become careless about safety procedures. Marcus failed to properly secure the main enclosure gate, assuming that the chimps would remain calm during feeding preparation. Caesar had been displaying increased territorial behavior throughout the week, his stress levels elevated due to the social disruption. The inadequately latched gate proved no barrier to Caesar's powerful shoulders and intelligent problem-solving abilities. The alpha male pushed through the compromised barrier and entered the holding area. where he immediately recognized Marcus as an intruder. Marcus turned from his food preparation to find Caesar standing in the doorway of the small preparation room. The massive chimp's eyes locked onto his position with obvious hostile intent. The confined space eliminated any possibility of retreat. Caesar's attack was swift and devastating. The 140-pound chimp launched himself at Marcus with explosive power, his long arms wrapping around the young man's torso, while his powerful hands found purchase on Marcus's head and shoulders. The impact drove Marcus backward against the metal food preparation counter, trapping him in the corner of the small room. The chimpanzee's hands worked with methodical brutality, his razor-sharp fingernails raking across Marcus's face and scalp, while his crushing grip prevented any possibility of escape. Caesar's territorial instincts drove him to target the areas that would cause maximum damage, his teeth finding Marcus's neck and hands with predatory precision. Marcus's screams for help echoed through the primate building, but Caesar's aggressive posture made immediate intervention extremely dangerous. Other zookeepers arrived within minutes, but Caesar's position in the confined space made tranquilizer darting nearly impossible. Marcus's movements grew weaker as massive blood loss and trauma overwhelmed his system. Marcus died from his injuries before emergency responders could safely intervene and sedate Caesar. The massive chimp was eventually tranquilized with multiple darts, but the confined space and his aggressive behavior had delayed intervention beyond the point where Marcus could be saved. The investigation revealed that inadequate gate security and single-person protocols had contributed to the tragedy. The zoo immediately overhauled its double-gate security system and implemented mandatory two-person teams for all primate interactions. Caesar was relocated to a more secure facility with enhanced containment measures. Marcus's death sent shockwaves through the zoological and academic communities, prompting enhanced safety training for students working with dangerous species. His family established a scholarship fund for aspiring animal behaviorists, emphasizing the importance of respecting wild animals regardless of their apparent familiarity with humans. It was November 7th, 2015, and the golden California sunshine bathed the rolling hills of San Diego Safari Park, where visitors enjoyed close encounters with African wildlife in naturalistic settings spanning 1,800 acres. The world-renowned facility specialized in conservation breeding programs and provided spacious habitats that allowed animals to express natural behaviors while remaining safely contained. The Big Cat section was undergoing routine maintenance to upgrade water features and enrichment elements in the lion habitat. Elena Rodriguez, a 33-year-old veterinary technician, had recently transferred to the Big Cat section after 5 years working with the park's hospital and smaller mammal collections. Elena maintained a small blog with 900 followers, where she documented her work with rescued wildlife and shared conservation success stories. Her passion for animal welfare had driven her to pursue increasingly challenging assignments with dangerous species. Elena had earned her veterinary technology degree from San Diego Community College while working nights to support herself through school. Her Mexican-American heritage had instilled in her a strong work ethic and deep respect for all living creatures. Elena's gentle approach and medical expertise had made her valuable in treating injured and sick animals, but her experience with large predators was still developing. That morning, Elena was assigned to assist with routine maintenance in the African lion habitat, a spacious enclosure that housed a pride of 6 lions in conditions that closely mimicked their natural savanna environment. The maintenance work required the lions to be secured in their holding area while repairs were made to a damaged water feature. African lions are apex predators that live in complex social groups called prides, with adult females weighing up to 280 pounds and possessing incredible strength, speed, and hunting instincts. Lionesses are the primary hunters of the pride, using stealth and coordination to bring down prey much larger than themselves. Even well-fed lions in captivity retain all their predatory behaviors, and they become extremely territorial when their habitat is disturbed. Elena entered the main lion habitat, carrying tools and materials needed to repair the water circulation system, believing that all 6 lions had been secured in their holding area as planned. Unknown to Elena, one of the pride's adult females had remained in the main enclosure due to a malfunctioning gate mechanism. The lioness had been resting in tall grass near the back of the habitat, perfectly camouflaged and invisible to casual observation. Elena began working on the water feature, focusing on the technical aspects of the repair while remaining alert for any signs of the lion's presence. The lioness had been watching Elena's movements from her concealed position, her predatory instincts triggered by the human's presence in what she considered her territory. Elena was kneeling beside the water feature, using tools to access the circulation pump, when the lioness began her final approach. The big cat moved with fluid silence across the habitat, using natural cover and her tawny coloration to remain invisible until she was within striking distance. The attack came without warning or sound. The lioness launched herself at Elena from a distance of 15 feet, her 200-pound frame covering the ground in a single, powerful bound. Elena had no time to react as the predator's massive paws struck her back, driving her face first into the rocky ground, while razor-sharp claws found purchase on her shoulders and spine. Elena's emergency whistle fell from her grip as the lioness's weight pinned her to the ground. The big cat's powerful jaws clamped down on Elena's neck, her crushing bite force severing vital arteries and causing massive trauma to her cervical spine. The lioness's predatory instincts drove her to maintain her grip while using her powerful hind legs to rake across Elena's torso, opening deep gashes that caused additional blood loss. Elena's struggles grew weaker as trauma and blood loss overwhelmed her system. Other staff members heard Elena's brief whistle blast and responded immediately, but the lioness's protective stance over her kill made immediate intervention dangerous. Emergency response teams arrived with tranquilizer equipment and successfully sedated the lioness after a tense standoff. Elena was rushed to the hospital, but her injuries were too severe, and she died en route despite the medical team's efforts to save her life. The investigation revealed that a malfunctioning gate mechanism and miscommunication between staff members had created the deadly situation. The safari park immediately implemented mandatory visual confirmation protocols requiring direct observation of all animals before any human entered an enclosure. Enhanced communication systems were installed to prevent similar coordination failures. Elena's death devastated her family and the veterinary community, prompting industry-wide reviews of safety protocols for maintenance activities around dangerous animals. Her blog followers established a memorial fund supporting wildlife veterinary education, ensuring her passion for animal care would continue through future generations of wildlife professionals. It was June 19th, 2016, and the Rocky Mountain air was crisp and clear at 7,000 feet elevation, where Mountain Wildlife Park nestled among towering pines and granite peaks. The 400-acre facility specialized in North American wildlife rehabilitation and education, providing spacious habitats for rescued bears, wolves, and big cats that could never be returned to the wild. Construction crews had been working for weeks to upgrade the grizzly bear viewing area, installing new safety barriers and observation platforms. David Kim, a 31-year-old construction foreman from Denver, was overseeing the final phase of renovations to the bear habitat's public viewing area. David maintained an Instagram account with 2,100 followers who enjoyed his behind-the-scenes construction content and time-lapse videos of major projects. His Korean-American work ethic and attention to detail had earned him a reputation as one of Colorado's most reliable construction supervisors. David had built his construction company from the ground up after immigrating to the United States with his parents as a teenager. His success in the competitive construction industry had come through long hours, meticulous planning, and an unwavering commitment to meeting deadlines regardless of challenges. That evening, David was working alone to install the final section of reinforced viewing barriers, determined to complete the project before the weekend deadline. The construction work required heavy machinery and power tools that generated significant noise and vibration throughout the area. Grizzly bears are among North America's most powerful predators, with adult males weighing up to 800 pounds and possessing incredible strength capable of breaking down doors and overturning cars. These massive omnivores have an acute sense of hearing and become extremely agitated by unfamiliar sounds and vibrations in their territory. Construction noise can trigger territorial responses that make even well-socialized bears unpredictable and dangerous. The construction vibrations from David's heavy equipment had been gradually weakening a section of the bear enclosure's concrete barrier wall that had developed hairline cracks during the previous winter's freeze-thaw cycles. Bruno, a 500-pound male grizzly bear, had been pacing restlessly near the damaged section, his territorial instincts heightened by the persistent noise. David was operating a pneumatic drill to install anchor bolts when Bruno's powerful shoulders finally broke through the compromised barrier section. The massive bear squeezed through the opening he had created, emerging into the construction zone where David was working with his back turned to the enclosure. David was focused on his work, wearing hearing protection that further isolated him from his surroundings. David had no awareness of the escaped predator until Bruno was already charging across the open construction area. The grizzly's charge across the construction site was swift and devastating. Bruno's 500-pound frame covered the distance to David's position in powerful bounds, his massive paws striking the rocky ground with thunderous impacts. David turned at the last moment, his eyes widening in shock as he saw the enormous bear bearing down on him. David attempted to reach his pickup truck parked nearby, but Bruno's superior speed made escape impossible. The massive bear struck David with bone-crushing force, his enormous paw connecting with David's back and driving him face-first into the rocky construction site. The impact shattered several ribs and caused immediate internal bleeding. Bruno's territorial fury drove him to continue the assault, his powerful jaws clamping down on David's neck while his razor-sharp claws raked across his victim's torso. The grizzly's crushing bite force fractured David's cervical vertebrae and severed major arteries, causing massive blood loss and immediate unconsciousness. David's movements ceased within minutes as Bruno's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive bear remained near the construction site, pacing aggressively while investigating the unfamiliar equipment. Zoo security discovered the scene an hour later when David failed to respond to his scheduled check-in call. Bruno was found guarding the construction area, his massive frame blocking access to David's body. Emergency response teams arrived with tranquilizer equipment and successfully sedated the bear after determining it was safe to approach. The investigation revealed that construction vibrations had compromised the enclosure's structural integrity, while inadequate coordination between construction and animal care staff had created the deadly situation. The wildlife park implemented comprehensive structural monitoring systems and mandatory real-time communication protocols for all construction activities near animal habitats. David's death prompted industry-wide reviews of construction safety protocols around dangerous animals and enhanced training for contractors working at zoological facilities. His family established a scholarship fund for immigrant students pursuing careers in construction management. It was September 4th, 2018, and the humid South Florida air hung heavy with moisture as Tropical Zoo Miami assessed damage from the previous night's severe thunderstorms. The 740-acre facility, home to over 3,000 animals from tropical climates around the world, had experienced significant flooding in low-lying areas where the storm drainage system had been overwhelmed by unprecedented rainfall. Staff members were conducting systematic inspections to ensure all animal enclosures remained secure and functional. Carmen Silva, a 26-year-old marine biology graduate student, was working part-time as a zoo educator while completing her master's thesis on coral reef conservation. Carmen maintained an Instagram account with 1,600 followers who enjoyed her wildlife education content and behind-the-scenes glimpses of zoo operations. Her passion for conservation had led her to pursue multiple internships and volunteer positions throughout South Florida's marine and terrestrial wildlife facilities. Carmen had grown up in Miami's Little Havana neighborhood, where her Cuban-American family had instilled in her a deep appreciation for the natural world and the importance of protecting endangered species. Her academic focus on marine ecosystems had given her extensive experience with aquatic animals and reptiles, but her knowledge of large terrestrial predators was more theoretical than practical. That morning, Carmen was assigned to inspect the big cat section for storm damage, particularly focusing on drainage systems and structural integrity around the jaguar habitat. The facility's location in low-lying coastal terrain made it vulnerable to flooding, and the previous night's storms had overwhelmed several drainage systems throughout the zoo. Jaguars are the third largest cats in the world and the apex predators of Central and South America, with adult males weighing up to 250 pounds and possessing the strongest bite force of any big cat. These solitary hunters are excellent swimmers and climbers, perfectly adapted for life in tropical wetlands and rainforests. Jaguars are ambush predators renowned for their stealth and patience, often remaining motionless for hours before striking with devastating speed and precision. The flooding had caused more damage than anyone realized. Underground, the stormwater had washed out a section of concrete barrier beneath the jaguar enclosure, creating a tunnel through the facility's storm drain system. Mateo, a 180-pound male jaguar, had discovered this new pathway during his morning exploration and had used his natural swimming ability to navigate the flooded drainage tunnel. Carmen was conducting her inspection near the education center, approximately 200 yards from the jaguar habitat, when Mateo emerged from a storm drain opening concealed by dense tropical vegetation. The big cat had followed the underground drainage system to an area where humans rarely ventured. Mateo approached Carmen's position with the silent patience that had made his species successful hunters for millions of years. The dense landscaping around the education center provided perfect cover for the spotted predator, whose natural camouflage made him nearly invisible among the dappled shadows. Carmen was photographing water damage to the education center's foundation when Mateo positioned himself for his attack. The jaguar had been observing her movements for several minutes, calculating the optimal moment to strike. The attack came without warning or sound. Mateo launched himself at Carmen from a distance of 10 feet, his 180-pound frame covering the ground in a single powerful bound. Carmen had no time to react as the jaguar's massive paws struck her back, driving her face first onto the concrete walkway while his razor-sharp claws found purchase on her shoulders and spine. Carmen's clipboard and camera scattered across the ground as Mateo's weight pinned her down. The jaguar's powerful jaws clamped down on the back of her neck, his crushing bite force instantly severing her spinal cord and causing massive trauma to her cervical vertebrae. Mateo's predatory instincts drove him to maintain his grip, while his powerful hind legs raked across Carmen's torso, opening deep gashes that caused additional blood loss. Carmen's movements ceased within seconds, as Mateo's brutal assault proved fatal. The jaguar remained positioned over his kill, his territorial instincts now focused on protecting his prize from potential competitors. Visitors in the nearby gift shop heard unusual sounds and alerted zoo security, who discovered the horrific scene within minutes. Mateo was found crouched over Carmen's body near the education center entrance, his predatory instincts still engaged. Emergency response teams arrived with tranquilizer equipment and successfully sedated the jaguar after ensuring visitor safety. The investigation revealed that unprecedented flooding had created an escape route through the storm drainage system that no security protocol had anticipated. The zoo immediately implemented comprehensive drainage inspections and underground barrier monitoring systems to prevent similar incidents. Carmen's death devastated her family and the marine biology community, prompting enhanced safety training for students working in zoological environments. Her research on coral reef conservation was completed posthumously by her academic advisor, and her family established a scholarship fund supporting Hispanic students pursuing marine biology degrees. The incident highlighted the unpredictable nature of animal escapes and the constant vigilance required to maintain safety around apex predators, even in the most secure facilities. Carmen's dedication to wildlife conservation would be remembered through the enhanced safety protocols that emerged from this tragedy. It was April 12th, 2016, in Dallas, Texas. The morning was cool and overcast, the zoo grounds still quiet before the flow of visitors. The routine of animal care unfolded as it had countless times before, with keepers moving between enclosures in practiced rhythm. But within the lion habitat, a small lapse in procedure would turn a familiar task into tragedy. Eva Goggins was 62, a senior zookeeper who had spent over 3 decades at the Dallas Zoo. She was widely respected among colleagues for her steady presence, a woman who rarely lost her composure even under pressure. Eva had begun working at the zoo in her 20s, rising to a trusted position where she trained younger keepers. Her reputation was built not on innovation, but on dependability. Staff leaned on her for guidance, and she carried a quiet pride in knowing the animals well, especially the big cats. Though careful by nature, Eva had grown accustomed to routines that dulled the edge of caution. Years of experience gave her confidence that she could judge the moods and patterns of the lions she cared for. However, she sometimes skipped formal steps to save time, convinced that her familiarity and instincts were enough. Her goal that morning was simple: clear debris and inspect part of the enclosure before visitors arrived. She believed the lions were secure behind barriers, as they usually were during cleaning. That belief, though, rested more on habit than on confirmation. The lion exhibit stretched with sandy soil, scattered rocks, and a broad viewing area beyond the reinforced glass for the public. Artificial trees and shaded outcroppings gave cover to the cats. In the early morning light, the stillness concealed the latent power of predators built for ambush. African lions, especially adult males, can weigh over 400 pounds, with a bite force exceeding 600 pounds per square inch. They are ambush hunters by design, often staying motionless in cover before launching sudden attacks. Though born in captivity, zoo lions retain the same predatory instincts. Keepers are trained never to enter enclosures with them unsecured, as even a moment of direct contact can prove fatal. Warnings were present. Eva's 2 younger co-workers later admitted they had seen the male lion lingering near the rear rock outcropping, restless before Eva entered. They assumed she knew where the animal was positioned. Protocol called for the lions to be locked into a separate holding area before any keeper stepped inside. But Eva bypassed the step, considering the inspection too brief to require it. Her colleagues hesitated to correct her, deferring to her seniority. The oversight would prove irreversible. Eva moved slowly along the ground, collecting fallen branches and checking the fence line. Her focus was on the debris, not on scanning for the animal. Behind her, the lion shifted, emerging silently from the rocks. Her co-workers, watching from outside the locked gate, noticed too late. By the time they shouted, the lion had already lunged. The impact was immediate and violent. The lion slammed Eva against the wall of the enclosure, knocking the breath from her. Before she could recover, the animal's jaws clamped down across her neck and shoulder, driving her to the ground. Witnesses outside saw her body convulse as the lion maintained the crushing hold, its weight pressing her into the sand. Eva's arms flailed briefly as she tried to push against the lion's chest. The claws raked across her torso, tearing through her uniform, leaving deep parallel gashes that bled heavily onto the sand. Her co-workers banged on the bars with tools, their voices breaking as they screamed for help. The lion dragged Eva several feet. Her legs kicked weakly before slowing, movement fading under the suffocating pressure at her throat. The staff emergency response was rapid but insufficient against the animal's speed. A tranquilizer dart was fired from outside, striking the lion's flank, but the drug would take minutes to act. Someone phoned for an ambulance, but Eva had already sustained catastrophic blood loss. The lion finally released her, circling briefly before retreating back toward the rocks. The scene left her colleagues in shock. Staff members rushed in once the lion weakened from the tranquilizer, but Eva showed no signs of life. The ambulance arrived within minutes, and the body was removed quietly, shielded from early visitors who had not yet reached the area. Investigators later documented deep puncture wounds consistent with the lion's canines, along with claw marks across her torso. The coroner's report later confirmed Eva died from massive hemorrhage and airway crushing caused by the lion's bite to the neck. The funeral was subdued, attended by family, colleagues, and a small group of zoo staff who had worked alongside her for years. Media coverage was limited to local outlets, presenting the event as a tragic workplace accident rather than a spectacle. At the zoo, the lion exhibit was closed for weeks. The animals moved off public display. New policies reinforced the prohibition on solo entry into carnivore enclosures, rules that Eva herself had once emphasized to younger keepers. It was September 7, 2014, in Phoenix, Arizona. The morning heat had already settled in, carrying the dry weight of late summer across the desert city. Families filtered into the Phoenix Zoo, moving from shaded paths to observation areas, expecting routine displays of animals going about their day. Few could have imagined that within one of those exhibits, a lapse in procedure would end with tragedy witnessed in real time. Laura Mitchell was 29, a zookeeper who had worked at the Phoenix Zoo for 6 years. She had gravitated to exotic cats early in her career, drawn to their power and independence. Colleagues regarded her as competent and committed, someone who cared deeply about enrichment and feeding routines. Mitchell was deliberate in her work, but not without small risks, habits born of repetition. Her confidence with the jaguar, in particular, sometimes led her to treat tasks around the enclosure with less caution than the formal guidelines demanded. Her life outside the zoo was quiet. She lived in a modest apartment near Tempe, drove an aging sedan, and rarely missed her early morning shifts. Mitchell saw her work as more than a job. It was a responsibility to maintain the health and behavior of animals most people would only glimpse behind glass. On that September morning, her goal was simple: adjust a feeding platform and prepare meat for the jaguar's mid-morning feed. It was the sort of routine she had carried out dozens of times, familiar enough to feel safe. The jaguar exhibit was designed with sandy ground, climbing logs, and a shaded pool where the animal sometimes rested. To visitors, it resembled a fragment of jungle transplanted into the desert, though the heat was sharper and drier than the species' natural environment. That morning, children pressed their hands against the viewing glass, waiting for the animal to appear. Jaguars are the largest cats in the Americas, averaging 200 to 250 pounds, with males capable of exceeding that. They possess one of the strongest bite forces of any big cat, powerful enough to pierce turtle shells and crush bone. In captivity, keepers are trained to use secure shifts and barriers during feeding, as direct proximity to the animal is never considered safe. Even well fed, their instinct to ambush and overpower remains intact. Warnings were present. Mitchell's co-workers had occasionally reminded her not to leave gates half-latched, a small shortcut she used when moving between spaces. On this day, visitors later reported seeing the jaguar pacing more than usual, tail flicking as it moved near the barrier. The heat may have heightened its agitation. Despite these cues, Mitchell entered the secondary holding pen without fully engaging the gate lock, believing she could quickly adjust the feeding platform before opening the chute for meat. Her focus was on efficiency, not the potential hazard just behind the barrier. From the observation area, families watched as she bent near the platform. The half-latched gate shifted slightly, leaving a narrow gap. Within seconds, the jaguar lunged forward, exploiting the opening. The impact was sudden. 220 pounds of muscle and claws slamming into Mitchell, knocking her flat against the hard surface of the pen floor. Screams rose from the crowd as the cat clamped its jaws onto her thigh, dragging her backward. Mitchell's voice carried across the enclosure, sharp cries breaking as the animal shook her leg violently. The jaguar reared back and bit into her abdomen, teeth sinking into soft tissue. Witnesses described her body arching under the pressure, her arms pushing weakly at the animal's head. The sound of tearing fabric mixed with the guttural growls reverberating inside the pen. Staff rushed from nearby enclosures. One keeper sprayed a fire extinguisher through the barrier, the hiss of gas clouding the air. The jaguar resisted, dragging Mitchell several feet. Her movements slowed as the animal's claws raked her midsection, opening deep gashes. The crowd outside wailed, parents pulling their children back from the glass, some covering their faces. A high-pressure hose was brought in, water blasting against the cat's body. The force startled it enough to release her, retreating briefly towards the corner. Mitchell lay motionless. Keepers rushed in to drag her clear of the enclosure, lifting her onto a stretcher, while one of them called 911. By the time paramedics arrived, she showed no signs of responsiveness. The wounds to her abdomen and thigh had caused massive blood loss. Despite emergency attempts, she was pronounced dead on sight. The autopsy later documented multiple deep lacerations, a severed femoral artery, and extensive abdominal trauma consistent with a large animal attack. Cause of death was listed as exsanguination due to jaguar-inflicted injuries. Her funeral was private, attended mostly by family and co-workers. Among zoo staff, the loss was described as preventable, a result of small shortcuts that became habit over time. The Phoenix Zoo was fined for safety lapses, and reinforced standards were put in place requiring double checks on barriers for all big cat enclosures. The jaguar exhibit reopened weeks later, unchanged in appearance. It was April 19, 2015, in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. The spring air was mild, carrying a faint chill beneath the overcast sky. Families filled the paths of Diergaarde Blijdorp, the Rotterdam Zoo, wandering between aviaries and primate houses. And inside one enclosure, a mechanical failure and a single miscalculation would turn a usual routine into a violent incident. Martin de Vries was 42 and a senior keeper who had worked with the zoo's gorillas for more than 15 years. Known among colleagues as steady and disciplined, he had built a reputation for his calmness in handling unpredictable animals. De Vries had a methodical nature, priding himself on routine and consistency. He was not reckless, but was deeply accustomed to the rhythms of the troop, especially the dominant male, a silverback named Becker. His long career made him a point of reference for younger staff, who often relied on him to model safe practices. His life revolved around the zoo. Unmarried, with a small apartment not far from the city center, he was the type to spend extra hours in the primate house, even after shifts ended. Co-workers said he seemed most at ease among the gorillas. That Sunday, his role was to conduct a cleaning inside the habitat, removing debris before the animals were cycled back in. For him, the task was routine. The assumption was simple. Becker had been shifted into a secure holding pen, leaving the main enclosure empty. The decision to step inside alone was consistent with years of experience and trust in established systems. The gorilla enclosure at Rotterdam Zoo was built with rockwork, climbing structures, and grassy slopes, framed by high viewing windows where visitors gathered. Beneath its naturalistic design lay reinforced concrete, steel gates, and locking mechanisms meant to guarantee separation between humans and animals. Gorillas, though primarily herbivores, are powerful primates capable of sudden, overwhelming violence. Adult silverbacks can exceed 400 pounds, with arms nearly twice as strong as the average humans. Their bite force rivals that of large predators, and their chest-beating displays are not empty shows, but signals of dominance that can precede forceful attacks. In captivity, keepers are trained never to share direct space with them. The barrier systems, if properly engaged, are the safeguard. That morning, however, the safeguard failed. De Vries entered after signaling to a co-worker that Becker had been locked into the holding pen. Unknown to him, a latch had malfunctioned, allowing the silverback to push back into the main enclosure. Visitors later recalled seeing the gorilla pacing along the rock wall, its broad shoulders moving with tension. De Vries, focused on clearing debris near the viewing glass, gave no sign of noticing. From the gallery, families with children watched, pointing out the keeper inside. Seconds later, Becker emerged from behind a rock outcropping. The charge was immediate, a blur of dark muscle across the enclosure. Witnesses said the impact sounded like a heavy object slamming against wood. The gorilla struck De Vries square in the chest, both arms driving him backward into the concrete barrier. He crumpled to the ground, gasping as the air left his lungs. Becker did not pause. He seized the keeper by the arm, lifting him as though weightless, and hurled him several feet across the floor. The sound of bone and flesh meeting concrete echoed in the enclosed space. De Vries attempted to crawl, but the gorilla was on him again. With both fists, Becker pounded his back. Screams erupted from the gallery as parents pulled children away from the glass. De Vries's legs kicked weakly as Becker gripped him and slammed him side to side, the motion more like violent tossing than dragging. His body snapped against the ground, limp in moments, though faint movement was still visible. The gorilla struck his head against the floor, leaving a dark pool spreading beneath him. Staff arrived within a minute, deploying fire hoses through the barriers. Jets of water lashed at the gorilla, but Becker only tightened his grip, slamming De Vries's torso against the ground before pounding his chest and abdomen with both fists. The blows left deep indentations and visible tearing along his uniform. Witnesses said his body no longer resisted after that sequence. Tranquilizer teams fired darts, the first striking Becker's shoulder, the second his flank. The gorilla continued its assault for nearly a minute, slamming the limp body against the floor before retreating under the growing effect of the sedative. Only then did keepers move in, pulling Vries clear. His body showed massive trauma, multiple fractures, chest collapse, and severe head injuries. Emergency crews called by the staff arrived within minutes, but only confirmed his death. The report listed blunt force trauma to the chest and head as the cause, injuries consistent with the repeated strikes. The funeral was held in Rotterdam days later, attended by colleagues who had worked with him for decades. They remembered his patience and the care he had shown for the troop, even as they admitted the risks had always been present. The zoo issued a short statement, noting the incident as a workplace accident, and quietly reinforced the barrier systems in the primate house. The gorilla exhibit was closed for weeks, reopening only after modifications to the latch systems. It was August 25, 2018, in Calgary, Alberta. The late summer sun lit the zoo grounds, families walking slowly between shaded exhibits as the day warmed. The grizzly bear enclosure, one of the Calgary Zoo's most popular attractions, was scheduled for a quiet enrichment session before opening fully to the public, but would not open that day due to something horrific. Derek Wallace was 36, a keeper who had been at the zoo for nearly a decade. His specialty was large mammals, bears, bison, and other species that required both strength and calmness from handlers. Colleagues described him as disciplined and dependable, someone who prided himself on doing the difficult work safely. He rarely cut corners, but he carried a confidence that sometimes translated into moving a step too quickly, assuming procedures would hold as they always had. Visitors often saw him giving talks near the bear exhibit, explaining their biology with steady, matter-of-fact delivery. Outside of work, Wallace lived a quiet life. He kept a modest apartment, spent time running trails near the Bow River, and was known among friends as someone who avoided risks outside of his job. His dedication to the animals was his main drive. That morning, his goal was straightforward: prepare the outdoor yard with enrichment objects, logs, toys, and food scents, so the bears could be released later to stimulate natural foraging behavior. The task was routine, one he had performed countless times. His decision to step inside, believing both bears were secured, was not reckless in his eyes, only another repetition of standard work. The grizzly enclosure sat on the eastern side of the zoo, a broad yard of dirt, grass, and scattered boulders, with a stream flowing through the middle. The air carried the faint smell of hay and damp soil. From the public gallery above, families could look down into the enclosure, where the two adult grizzlies, a male weighing over 600 pounds and a slightly smaller female, were housed. Grizzly bears are among the largest predators in North America, with adult males standing over 7 feet on their hind legs and equipped with claws 4 inches long. Their bite force can exceed 1,200 pounds per square inch, capable of crushing bone. Though captive-born, their behavior remains rooted in instinct. Food, territory, and dominance determine their reactions. Keepers are trained to avoid direct contact entirely, relying on secured gates and shift procedures to move animals safely. Earlier that week, one gate between the indoor holding and the outer yard had been sticking slightly, requiring extra effort to latch fully. Staff noted it, planning to repair it during routine maintenance. On that morning, another keeper stood nearby, observing as Wallace entered, but from her angle she could not clearly see if the latch had engaged. Wallace, trusting the system, carried the enrichment objects inside without pause. At first, everything was calm. He walked across the dirt yard, setting down a toy against a boulder and scattering scents to encourage foraging. Families had already begun to gather at the gallery, watching with mild interest, though the bears themselves were expected to be inside. Then movement came from the rear gate. A heavy shape surged forward, fur brushing the metal as the male grizzly burst into the yard. The gate, not fully secured, had swung open under the animal's weight. The bear struck Wallace from behind with both forepaws. The impact drove him face first into the dirt, knocking the wind from his lungs. The sound of the hit was described by one witness as like a body slamming into wet sand. Wallace barely had time to move before the animal clamped down on his shoulder, claws tearing into his back. He cried out, muffled by the ground, as the grizzly raked its claws down his arms and sides. Dirt and blood mixed beneath him. The animal flipped him over with startling ease, jaws locking onto his torso. Visitors on the gallery screamed, some pulling children away, others frozen in place as the bear shook him violently. Keepers rushed to distract the animal, throwing food and banging metal, while others deployed high-pressure hoses through the barriers. The grizzly remained locked on. Wallace's body jerked with each bite, his legs twitching briefly before going still. The bear pressed its weight down, claws sinking into his abdomen. The struggle lasted under 2 minutes, though to those watching it stretched unbearably long. Staff finally managed to draw the bear back toward the holding area with food, slamming the gate shut once it crossed. They immediately called for paramedics. Wallace lay motionless, his uniform shredded, arms bent unnaturally. Medics entered within moments, but the damage was irreparable. He had suffered catastrophic trauma, deep lacerations across his torso, broken ribs, and severe blood loss. He was pronounced dead at the scene. His funeral days later was quiet, attended by family, co-workers, and a handful of longtime zoo visitors who knew him by name. There was no media spectacle, only a recognition among colleagues that familiarity with dangerous animals can create blind spots. Canadian authorities required the zoo to suspend bear demonstrations and revise handling procedures. The pair of grizzlies were kept out of public view for months, their yard reinforced and gate systems inspected thoroughly. It was November 2nd, 2013, in Kolkata, India. The morning was warm and damp, the kind of late autumn day when the air still carried the weight of summer. Families filled the Alipore zoological gardens, children tugging at their parents' hands toward the tiger enclosures. On the schedule was a public feeding demonstration, a routine event meant to show the animal's strength from a controlled distance. What unfolded instead left a permanent scar on both staff and visitors. Rakesh Banerjee was 41, a veteran keeper with more than a decade of experience at the zoo. He was known for his steady manner and his ability to keep demonstrations calm before large crowds. Over the years, he had developed a reputation for smooth presentations, rarely rattled by restless animals or noisy visitors. Colleagues described him as dependable, someone who took pride in showing the zoo as a safe place for families. But his long familiarity sometimes led him to cut small corners, trusting his instincts more than strict adherence to protocol. Banerjee's daily habits were precise. He arrived before sunrise, checked the big cat enclosures, and prepared the food with care. He had no interest in media attention, though demonstrations placed him in public view. For him, the work was about showing visitors that the animals were not monsters, but powerful creatures to be respected. On this particular day, his motivation was the same as always: conduct the demonstration smoothly, keep the crowd engaged, and finish his rounds before the afternoon heat set in. Entering the enclosure briefly to adjust the feeding platform was not standard procedure, but it was something he had done before when he judged it safe. The tiger enclosure was a wide, grassy pit bordered by tall rock walls, with shaded areas where the animals could retreat from the sun. From the public gallery above, visitors could look down through reinforced barriers at the striped cats below. Bengal tigers are among the largest cats in the world, males weighing up to 500 pounds and equipped with claws that can pierce flesh in a single swipe. Their bite force, exceeding 1,000 pounds per square inch, allows them to crush bone as easily as muscle. Though captive-born, zoo tigers retain the instincts of ambush predators. Keepers are trained never to turn their backs and never to enter enclosures without animals securely locked away. That morning, warning signs were visible. One of the tigers, a large male, paced restlessly along the edge of the rock wall, its tail lashing in short, sharp movements. Some staff noted the agitation and suggested waiting until the animal calmed. Visitors near the front observed the tiger's repeated circling, whispering uneasily to each other. Banerjee appeared unconcerned. He stepped into the secondary space to adjust a feeding tray, confident the demonstration would continue without issue. Witnesses later recalled how quickly the sequence unraveled. Banerjee had turned his back, bending to collect meat from a bucket when the tiger lunged. The cat cleared the short distance in an instant, claws raking across his back as it pulled him down. Witnesses reported hearing a heavy thud and Banerjee's cry as the tiger struck, though most later admitted the details blurred in panic. The tiger clamped its jaws into his neck and chest, shaking him with violent force. Banerjee struggled briefly, his arms pushing weakly against the massive head before going slack. The animal dragged him several feet, paws leaving deep impressions in the soil before pinning him under its weight. Keepers rushed with poles and tools, slamming them against the barriers to distract the animal. The tiger responded with another shake, its teeth sinking deeper, muscle and bone tearing audibly. His body jerked with the motion, then lay motionless. Staff deployed fire extinguishers, white spray filling the air, but the animal did not release until another keeper blasted it with a high-pressure hose. Even then, the tiger backed away slowly, its muzzle soaked dark red, its eyes locked on the still figure on the ground. The entire attack lasted less than a minute. Visitors who had remained described it as feeling far longer, the sequence unfolding in brutal clarity. Banerjee's uniform was shredded. His chest and neck bore crushing injuries consistent with the tiger's bite, leaving him unresponsive within seconds. His face was turned toward the gallery, but there was no sign of recognition in his expression. When the enclosure was secured, medics called by staff entered immediately. They found no pulse. Blood loss had been massive, compounded by catastrophic crushing injuries to the chest and neck. The funeral was held in Kolkata days later, attended by family, colleagues, and a small group of long-time zoo visitors who had known Banerjee from years of demonstrations. The zoo suspended all public feeding demonstrations permanently. The tigers were moved to reinforced enclosures, their access restricted during any keeper presence. Authorities classified the case as a workplace accident and ordered an internal review, but no criminal charges were filed. It was July 19, 2013. The aging wildlife park outside Houston showed its wear in the hot summer sun. Michael Turner was 44 years old. He had worked with big cats for over 15 years. The other workers said he was calm and careful. He always looked out for his team and the animals. Turner could have taken jobs at bigger, newer places, but he stayed at this park. He felt like the animals were his job to protect. The park was old and didn't have much money. Turner knew the risks of his work, but he trusted what he had learned over the years. That summer, the park hired a new worker. Turner was teaching him the job. Turner liked to show new people how things worked by going into the animal areas with them. He thought this was better than just watching from outside. On this day, he wanted to show the new worker how to feed Kuma, a male lion that weighed 450 pounds. The workers had been talking about a broken gate latch all week. People on the radio said the gate would sometimes get stuck. Turner had heard this. He knew about it, but he had visitors watching and a new worker to train, so he kept going with his plan. The wildlife park looked run down. The wooden fences were old and weathered. The steel mesh fencing sagged in some spots. Tall grass grew wild near the walking paths. The lion areas were large, but relied on outdated sliding mesh gates. Every latch had to be closed by hand, and the mechanisms often stuck or scraped against their frames. That afternoon was very hot. The sun beat down on the gravel paths and metal fencing. Maintenance workers stood by a shed, watching the animal keepers work. Cicadas buzzed loudly in the heat. Lions are built to kill. Males can weigh over 400 pounds. Their paws can crush bones. Their jaws can crack skulls. In zoos, they can live for many years, but they never lose their wild instincts. Even when they seem calm around people they know, lions can turn violent without warning. They react fast to sounds, smells, or anything different in their routine. Kuma had been fed thousands of times before, but the danger was always there. There were warning signs before Turner went into the enclosure. Kuma was walking back and forth along the fence. His tail was twitching. He was watching the workers outside. The new keeper saw that the gate was hard to close when Turner pulled it, but he didn't say anything. When Turner closed the gate behind him, it made a grinding metal sound. The latch didn't slide fully into place. Workers nearby would later say they saw the gate shift slightly when the lion pushed against it. Even with these warning signs, Turner kept going. He started to move Kuma toward a smaller holding area. This should have been a normal, safe job. The attack happened fast. As Turner was guiding the lion with hand signals, Kuma jumped forward. He pushed through the weak gate with sudden force. People watching heard the steel frame rattle and the heavy sound of the lion hitting Turner in the chest. The keeper fell backward and was pinned down right away. The new worker yelled for help, but his voice shook and he froze when he saw what was happening. Maintenance workers grabbed metal tools and hit them against the fence. The loud, clanging sounds rang out across the park. Kuma roared. It was a deep sound that carried through the area and covered up Turner's cries. On the ground, the fight was short but terrible. Kuma's paws pressed into Turner's shoulders. His claws tore through Turner's shirt and into his shoulders. The lion's jaws clamped down on Turner's torso, shaking him hard against the gravel. People watching said dust came up from the gravel as the two bodies rolled together. Turner tried to protect himself. He pushed against the lion's face, but the weight was too much. His legs kicked weakly as blood spread under him. The air filled with roaring, people shouting, and the hollow sound of workers hitting steel bars. The attack went on for minutes that felt much longer to the people watching. They tried to get Kuma's attention, but failed. The animal stayed focused on Turner. Finally, Turner's movements got slower. His body went still under the lion's grip. The new keeper was pale and shaking. Staff had to pull him back because they were afraid he might try to run to the gate. Kuma only let go of Turner when more workers came with fire hoses. They sprayed water through the bars. The lion stepped away slowly, walking back and forth with water dripping from his mane. Turner lay without moving. Emergency workers were called right away, but there was nothing they could do when they got there. Turner was dead at the scene. His uniform was ripped. The gravel around him was stained dark red. His keys and radio were scattered near the bent gate. The new keeper was shaking and couldn't stop. He was taken to the hospital and treated for shock. Maintenance workers stayed for hours, giving their stories to investigators. Their clothes were still wet from the hose spray. The park closed for 6 months. Investigators said the broken equipment and old safety rules caused the accident. Turner's funeral was quiet in his hometown. No cameras were there. Just family and a few other animal keepers came. Local newspapers wrote about it briefly, but the story didn't spread much beyond the area. Kuma was not killed. He was moved to a more secure place with stricter rules. It was August 23, 2014. The rural zoo outside Thrissur, Kerala was busy with festival week crowds, and the morning heat pressed down on the concrete elephant wash area. Romesh Pilai was 52 years old and had worked with elephants his whole life. He started as a teenager, helping his uncle. Other workers knew him as patient and careful. He liked to keep things neat and follow the same routines every day. Romesh lived nearby with his wife. His grown son sometimes helped out on busy days. He preferred quiet work over big shows. He kept his tools organized and his schedule tight. The other staff trusted him to make good choices when they were short on workers. Festival week meant more visitors and less time between groups. Romesh was told to wash Suraj an 8,000-pound bull elephant. He thought this would be easier than moving the animal or doing a public feeding. Junior keepers would watch and then practice under his guidance. He had handled Suraj on difficult days before. The elephant seemed to respond well to him. With a break between school groups, he planned to finish fast and clear the area before the next crowd came. The wash area was a concrete rectangle that sloped toward a drain. It had a low wall on one side and steel bars on the other. Algae made the floor slippery near the drain where the hose often leaked. From the barrier 20 feet away, visitors could see everything clearly. The steel chain around the elephant's right leg, the buckets lined up, the stiff brush in Ramesh's hand, the water valve by the wall. The air smelled of wet dirt, soap, and elephant dung. Asian bull elephants are huge and move fast for their size. Adult males stand 8 to 9 feet tall at the shoulder and often weigh 6,000 to 10,000 pounds, with the largest bulls reaching even more. A trunk can lift hundreds of pounds. A foot can press thousands of pounds of force into a small spot. Male elephants go through a condition called must. This brings hormone changes, gland discharge, and a shorter temper. Training helps reduce risk, but it doesn't remove wild instincts. A handler's safety depends on good footing, working equipment, and enough space. There were warning signs. Weeks before, Suraj had shown signs of must. By this week, those signs had gotten better, but he was still restless. His tail would snap, and his head would go up when crowds got loud. That morning, a junior keeper said the chain latch sometimes got stuck. He also said algae near the drain made the floor slick. Romesh checked the latch and heard it click into place. He decided to go ahead with his routine. He weighed the schedule and the elephant's calmer mood against the small risks he thought he could handle. The first few minutes went as planned. Romesh worked along the left shoulder and behind the ears. He stayed close to the wall where he could turn quickly if the animal moved. Suraj flapped his ears and rocked from side to side. A few visitors leaned against the viewing barrier to take phone pictures. When the water pressure dropped, a loose loop of hose slid over Ramesh's boot. He turned to reach the valve. At that moment, Suraj stepped forward. He pulled tight against the chain until a link rode higher on the post and changed the angle. The setup of the area changed. The chain lifted just enough for Suraj to bring his head closer. The trunk curved low and then rose up, wrapping around Ramesh at the waist. People behind the barrier heard the brush hit the concrete and the heavy sound of a shoulder hitting the wall. Suraj trumpeted. It was a hard sound that filled the area and bounced off the roof as the crowd's talking turned into overlapping shouts. Suraj swung him and drove him into the wall again. Ramesh slid to the wet floor. The elephant put his right foot across his pelvis and lower abdomen, pinning him down. Concrete chipped at the edge of the drain under the weight. The trunk pressed across his chest, forcing his back to the floor as the foot shifted and pressed down harder. Junior keepers grabbed a steel bar and hit the chain to distract the bull. Another worker opened the valve fully. A hard stream of water washed over the elephant's head and shoulders but had no effect. The pressure became slower and more deliberate. The foot lifted and came down again, higher toward the chest, the weight settling with crushing force. The concrete area made every sound louder. Scraping footpads, the rush of water, the trumpet's boom, the dull crack as bones broke. Ramesh's legs moved once and then went still. His keys slid across the floor into the drain. Other handlers came with a pole and tried to push the trunk away. Suraj moved toward them, giving a little slack. One man dragged Ramesh a foot before the trunk tightened across his upper body and pushed him back. The chain made creaking sounds but held. Another hose blasted the side of the elephant's head. Suraj stood over the still body, breathing hard. A worn tusk scraped the wall. The vet ran in from the service gate with a dart gun and aimed at the shoulder. The first dart hit high and stuck at an angle. It took several minutes for the drug to calm the elephant. Suraj's swaying got wider and the pressure eased slowly. The junior workers pulled Romesh clear and tried to help him on the wet concrete. His shirt was torn and soaked. He didn't respond. Medics reached the side road and moved him to a stretcher. They kept trying to help him in the truck, then stopped. Staff stood along the fence, clothes wet from the water spray, watching the empty area as a hose kept running. By evening, the bent latch on the chain post was fixed. Investigators took pictures of chipped concrete near the drain and scrape marks along the wall. The zoo closed for several days, then reopened with fewer demonstrations and stricter rules for the wash area. It was May 10th, 2015. The zoo in Leipzig, Germany, was busy with Sunday crowds who lined the bridge over the tiger habitat to watch the feeding. Hans Becker was 39 years old and worked as a mid-level keeper. He had 2 young children and was known for being neat and steady. He arrived before dawn and kept his boots and paperwork clean. Other workers trusted his notes and his ability to spot small changes in the animals. His experience also made him work faster. When the public schedule was tight, he sometimes skipped checking locks twice if they felt right the first time. He trusted the feel of the equipment and the sound of a door closing properly. This Sunday, he planned to place meat at a hidden door while families watched from above. His plan was simple: place the food, seal the door, check it, then signal that it was ready. The tiger area was shaped like a shallow bowl with sand and grass. It was surrounded by a water moat and stone ledges. Water pumps hummed behind a small waterfall. From the bridge, visitors could see the striped cats and then watch them disappear behind the rocks. Tigers are built to hunt by surprise with quick, deadly force. Adult males often reach 9 feet from nose to tail and weigh over 400 pounds. Their front legs are powerful enough to break bones with a single swipe. Their jaws can crack bones. In zoos, they learn routines, but they still react strongly at doorways and feeding spots. There were warning signs. Earlier that week, maintenance workers wrote down that the northeast door was dragging slightly. It would close, but the bottom edge needed a harder push. The schedule was rushed because of an extra school group. Hans decided the door felt good enough to use. Before feeding time, the male tiger named Raja was pacing in the back area. His tail tip was twitching, and his ears were forward. 2 staff members stood nearby with radios, while parents lifted children onto the rail to see better. Hans carried a bucket into the corridor and slid open the inside panel. He set the meat on the ledge. The sliding panel came back, but it stuck in the last inch of track. He bumped it with his shoulder until it thudded shut, then turned toward the outer door. He misjudged the closure by just a little bit. The inside panel had not fully locked into its bottom track. This left a thin gap where the seal should have been tight. When Hans let go of the outer door, Raja pushed from the other side. The panel lifted slightly in its track, just enough for the claws to hook the edge. Metal made ticking sounds against metal. The gap got wider. Visitors saw a blur of orange and black stripes. Raja's front half cleared the door opening in one powerful movement that shook the frame. Hans turned to run back, but had only 2 steps of corridor and a wall behind him. The tiger hit him high, slamming him into the wall. The bucket rolled and stopped against the doorway. Hans fell on one hip. The tiger's weight came down on top of him, front paws pinning his shoulders. Claws tore through his clothes and skin. Raja moved lower and bit down on the left side of his body. The shaking that followed was short and violent. On the bridge, people cried out in voices that mixed with the sound of the water pumps. Hans tried to push at the tiger's face, then at the lower jaw. His movements were small under the heavy weight. Raja dragged him against the door edge, inch by inch. Radios crackled. One keeper ran for blank cartridges. Another grabbed the manual winch handle. Parents pulled their children down and backed away from the rail. The first blanks fired, sharp and flat inside the corridor. Raja flinched but did not let go. Another pair cracked. The tiger bit again higher near the shoulder and pressed Hans onto his back. His boots scraped against the floor. A keyring slid and stopped near the wall. The door crew began working the winch, pulling the slider slowly to trap the tiger back in the run, but the alignment was off with Hans's body caught at the edge. A keeper shoved a pole through the gap to push Raja's head aside. Another blank cracked. Raja shifted just enough for the winch to gain another inch. The steel door moved forward against the frame with a grinding sound. The fight got shorter with jerks and growls. Hans's breathing was shallow and wet. The door moved closer as staff worked the winch handle. One more blank fired, and Raja pulled back into the run. The door slammed shut with a final clank. When it was safe, 2 keepers pulled Hans clear. He wasn't responding. His shirt was torn across the left chest and stomach. Blood had soaked through the fabric. A broken radio lay by his hip. Visitors were moved off the bridge while medics worked on the corridor floor. The pump noise was suddenly loud without people's voices. Officials arrived within minutes, followed by the vet team. Raja was given drugs to make him sleep and moved to another pen. The floor showed scrape marks at the door, a smear across the threshold, and a circular mark from the spinning bucket. Hans was pronounced dead at the scene. The zoo put out a statement the next day and added a small memorial plaque near the tiger exhibit. It was March 4th, 2017. The zoo in Johannesburg, South Africa, was busy with warm afternoon tours as school children leaned over railings near the primate house. David McQuena was 47 years old and had worked with chimpanzees for many years. He grew up a few miles from the zoo. He liked quiet teaching better than big shows. He would walk school groups through behavior notes and point out the difference between young chimps playing and adult displays. He wrote down more details than required and called in small repairs that others ignored. He would come back after closing to make sure water lines were turned off. The staff was short that week. One keeper was out sick, and another was helping move a giraffe to a different zoo, so David took on transfer duties that usually needed 2 people. He agreed to do it because student tours were backed up, and he wanted to keep the feeding and cleaning on schedule. His plan was simple: move 2 chimps into holding pens, clear the main area, then come back to give a short talk to a visiting researcher and an intern. The chimp area was shaped like an L, with connected rooms and runs. A concrete transfer corridor linked the night dens to the island exhibit. Heavy doors slid up and down in steel channels. Red catch latches sat at waist height, where hands should go. A squeeze pen opened from the far end for medical checks. From the public window, the tour group could not see the corridor itself. They could only hear steel hitting steel and the sound of chimps walking on plywood flooring. Chimpanzees are small, but very strong. Adult males usually weigh 90 to 130 pounds. Their arms can pull their body weight hand over hand and pull a person off balance in 1 second. Their hands are built for gripping and tearing. Their teeth can cut through skin and muscle. In groups, they work together and can go from curious to angry when something sets them off. Living in zoos creates routines, but doesn't change their wild instincts, especially around doorways, food, and crowded viewing windows. There were warning signs. For 2 days, a teenage male had acted up when crowds pressed against the glass. He would slap and bounce off the mesh. That morning, the radio carried a reminder to keep double barriers and get a clear view before stepping past a checkpoint. With fewer staff around, David told the intern to keep the students at the window while he managed the chimps in the corridor alone. He brought the first chimp into the transfer lane with food and closed the den behind it. Normally, he would pause and check the lock twice, but noise from the viewing area pulled his attention. A group of students had pressed against the glass, shouting and banging despite the guide's warnings. David turned his head for a second to wave them back. In that moment, the teenage male in the back lunged, shoving against the door before it fully seated. The frame rattled. Metal rang. The chimp's shoulders slipped through the gap, and 2 more followed in a rush. One became 4 in seconds as 2 females and another young chimp pushed through the opening. Screams from the tour group got louder and turned into steady noise. Inside the corridor, the chimps filled the space, trapping David against a door he could not open without letting them reach the public side. He braced a foot against the doorframe and tried to keep his hands away from their mouths, but the first hit knocked him off balance. A second strike took him to the floor. The attack came in bursts. A hand grabbed his wrist and twisted. Another chimp stamped his arm against the concrete. Teeth found his shoulder and upper arm. He pulled one hand free and tried to cover his throat. His feet slipped on dust as the animals circled around him. The sounds were shrieks, heavy breathing, skin scraping on concrete, and the hollow clang of a door that would not close. The intern grabbed small stones from a planter just outside the visitor path and threw them through the open service window toward the corridor, not to hit the animals but to startle them. Stones bounced and scattered. The researcher shouted into the radio for help and began moving students back down the path. A keeper at the far door started getting sedation drugs ready. The primate supervisor ran with a dart gun from the clinic. David rolled toward the squeeze pen, using the wall for support. A female bit his leg and dragged him back. The teenage male hit his face and pulled at his fingers. Blood pooled under his arm and left a short trail where he had been dragged. He got to one knee and then fell again as 3 bodies pressed in and beat down with open hands and fists. The lead keeper reached the corridor window, aimed, and fired a dart into the largest male's thigh. The animal jumped and spun, tearing the dart loose and throwing it against the wall. A second dart stuck. After a minute, the male's movements got slower. The others turned to the glass, slapping and bouncing while staff slammed a barrier between the public window and the corridor. The outside noise dropped. Inside, the shrieks continued. One female climbed to the top of the frame and dropped onto David's body, knocking air from his lungs. Another gripped his hair and slammed his head sideways into the floor. The lead keeper moved forward with with a riot shield, wedged it between the animals, and dragged David by his belt while the drugs began to work. The teenage male's hits got slower. A third dart found a shoulder. The corridor settled to heavy breathing and low sounds. Medics came in as soon as the last animal fell down and was tied with straps. David's sleeves were torn apart. His arms showed deep cuts and crush injuries. His face and head showed deep cuts. He did not respond to voices. They worked on him on the floor, then moved him to a stretcher and out a service gate to an ambulance waiting by the staff parking lot. By evening, the corridor had been photographed and cleaned. A shoe lay by the door with its lace broken. A radio with a cracked antenna sat under a bench. Security closed the viewing window until new locks could be put on the catch points. David was pronounced dead at the hospital. That week, school children came back to place flowers at the front gates and leave drawings of chimps taped to the fence. New rules required a second person to check every barrier and banned single-person transfers in that corridor. It was January 12th, 2018. The Wildlife Rescue Center in northern Ontario sat quiet under deep snow, with frost covering the enclosures and the hum of a diesel generator carrying through the cold air. Paul Henderson was 41 years old. He had worked at the private rescue for over 10 years, taking care of black bears that had been brought in as orphaned cubs or moved from roadside attractions. He was a quiet man who lived alone in a small cabin on the property. Other workers said he was dependable and gentle with animals. He rarely raised his voice even when they tested his patience. He was known for forming bonds with bears others found difficult. He had raised Shadow, a male black bear, from a cub after its mother was killed by hunters. The two had shared more than 15 years in the same area. Winter work was slower, but more dangerous. Bears did not fully sleep at the center, waking up for feedings during mild weather. Paul usually worked with another keeper for feeding, but staff shortages left him working alone that morning. He didn't complain. He was used to taking on extra work when others were sick or roads were closed by snow. His goal was to move quickly through the routine before a contractor crew arrived to work on new fencing. He carried the feed bucket himself, as he had done many times. The bare area stretched across an acre of frozen ground. Snow piled high against the mesh fencing, and heavy wooden posts were capped with ice. A den opening, built up with timbers, led underground, where Shadow spent most of the winter. Outside the den, the surface was packed with snow and marked with animal tracks. Frost hung from tree branches above. The air smelled faintly of diesel and feed from the prep shed. Black bears are smaller than grizzly bears, but still powerful. Adult males can weigh anywhere from 300 to 600 pounds. Their strength is more than enough to overpower a person. Their bite force can split bone. Despite their size, they move with surprising speed, covering short distances in seconds. In captivity, they learn feeding routines but remain wild, especially when upset or when smells confuse their instincts. A bear's sense of smell is one of the sharpest in the animal kingdom. They can detect odors from miles away. There were warning signs. Shadow had been restless for weeks, disturbed repeatedly by staff clearing snow off the den roof and by generators running longer than usual. Another keeper had noted his pacing at odd hours and suggested being careful. Paul knew this, but he trusted his bond with the animal. That morning, he had also handled fish for other areas and carried the smell on his gloves and sleeve. He didn't change gear before moving to Shadow's pen. For years, he had entered with the same clothing and never had a problem. Paul opened the gate with the feed bucket and stepped onto the hard-packed snow. Shadow came out of the den, moving low, his head swinging side to side. The bear paused, sniffed the air, and focused on Paul's left arm instead of the bucket. People who saw it later said the bear's body language changed the moment he smelled the fabric. Paul set the bucket down near the usual feeding spot, but Shadow went past it completely, heading straight toward him. The charge was sudden. Snow crunched under heavy paws as the bear closed the short distance. Paul raised one arm, but Shadow struck high, knocking him backward onto the snow. The first bite clamped onto his shoulder, shaking him hard against the frozen ground. Paul cried out once, muffled under the sound of deep growls. His boots scraped against ice as he tried to twist free. A co-worker arriving late with tools heard shouting and ran toward the pen. From outside the fence, he saw Paul pinned down. Shadow's jaws locked onto his upper body. Blood stained the snow in dark patches that spread quickly. Paul's free hand pushed weakly at the bear's head, but the weight pressing into his chest left little room to move. Construction workers at a nearby building grabbed metal sheets and slammed them against a truck bed. The sharp banging echoed through the woods, mixing with shouted voices. Shadow barely reacted, dragging Paul a few feet toward the den entrance. The bear's growls were deep, rising with each pull. Paul's movements slowed. His arm, once pushing, went still against the snow. The coworker yelled into his radio for help, trying to distract the animal by hitting the fence posts with a crowbar. The sound carried, but Shadow stayed locked on, pressing down with his front legs and shaking Paul again near the den opening. Snow sprayed up around them. Paul's jacket tore open, his sleeve dark with blood. Wildlife officers reached the area within minutes, but by then Paul was not moving. A rifle was raised, then lowered in favor of darts, but Shadow's position over the body made a clear shot difficult. The decision was made quickly. A shot rang out across the area. The bear fell near the den, heavy in the snow. The officers entered and pulled Paul free, but there were no signs of life. By evening, the ground had been cleared. The blood-stained snow was shoveled away, and the feed bucket picked up, still half full. Paul's torn gloves were collected as evidence. A broken watch lay in the trampled snow near the gate. Paul's body was cremated, and his ashes were scattered on a nearby forest trail he had often walked alone. Shadow was put down at the scene. Local newspapers ran brief stories, calling it a tragic reminder of the risks of working with wild animals. At the rescue, a simple wooden sign was placed near the bear area with Paul's name carved into it. Thanks for watching. Want to watch more? Click on your screen now.